want him to be a prince or a princess, not knowing what the gender would be, which would be different from protocol, and that he wasn't going to receive security.
Tom Bower has sparked new attention with claims surrounding Meghan Markle that raised serious questions. It began with rumors that Meghan never got pregnant and missing baby pictures. Then a viral video of her child triggered new claims. Why were the IRS, Child Services, and Immigration coming after Meghan? Join us as we uncover the truth behind this revelation. The arrival that split opinion. Meghan Markle stepped into the royal world at a moment when the entire globe was watching. At first, everything looked like a fresh beginning. There was excitement in the air, and many believed she would bring a modern touch to an old institution. Her arrival, alongside Prince Harry, created a wave of interest that spread across countries and cultures. People saw it as a story of change, hope, and unity. But behind the early glow, things were not as smooth as they appeared. Inside palace circles, early tensions were already forming. Royal biographer Tom Bower later described the environment around Meghan's entry as one marked by unease. In his interpretation, she was often viewed as someone who did not easily blend into the traditional rhythm of royal life. This idea slowly began to shape how parts of the press framed her, even before deeper conflicts became public. At the same time, expectations placed on Meghan were unusually high. She was not only joining a royal family, she was stepping into a system built on strict traditions and long-standing rules. Every move was observed closely. Every gesture was interpreted in different ways. What seemed like simple adjustments to her new life were sometimes viewed as signs of tension or resistance. As time passed, the tone around her began to change. The early excitement started to mix with doubt. Some sections of the press began questioning her behavior and her approach to royal duties. Interviews were picked apart, public appearances were analyzed, and small details became talking points. This shift did not happen all at once. It built slowly, piece by piece, until the mood around her felt different from the one she entered with. Within these growing conversations, two clear sides started to form. One side saw Meghan as a fresh voice entering an outdated system. They believed she brought honesty and modern thinking into a world that needed change. The other side saw her differently. They believed she struggled to adjust and questioned whether she fully understood the expectations placed upon her role. Tom Bower's perspective added another layer to this growing divide. In his writing and commentary, he often highlighted early friction between Meghan and parts of the royal structure. His framing influenced how some observers interpreted those early months, reinforcing the idea that the relationship between Meghan and the institution was complicated from the start. As this discussion deepened, comparisons began to appear. Catherine, Princess of Wales, was often used as a reference point. Her public journey within the royal family was seen as steady and consistent, which made the contrast more noticeable to observers. These comparisons were not always direct, but they quietly shaped how Meghan's early days were judged by different audiences. With every passing month, the story became less about arrival and more about adjustment. The excitement that once surrounded her began to mix with questions, opinions, and conflicting interpretations. What had started as a moment of celebration slowly turned into a subject of debate. And just when it seemed the conversation could not grow any more complex, a new wave of attention began forming around the narrative of authors, biographies, and insider accounts that promised to reveal even deeper tensions. The biography effect. The moment Tom Bower's biography Revenge entered the conversation, the tone surrounding Meghan Markle shifted once again. What had already been a story filled with mixed opinions suddenly gained a sharper edge. The book did not simply retell known events, it reshaped them through a more critical lens, giving old moments a new and more intense meaning. From the beginning, Bower's writing focused on tension. He presented the royal environment as a place where trust was fragile and relationships were easily strained. In his framing, Meghan's arrival did not just bring change, it triggered a deeper clash between personal independence and royal tradition. This interpretation quickly became a reference point for many discussions that followed. Even though many of the claims and interpretations in the biography were debated and challenged, the influence of the narrative was undeniable. It spread through conversations, articles, and commentary, where selected parts were repeated and emphasized. Over time, the book became less about its full content and more about the version of Meghan it helped to shape in public discussion. Bauer did not focus on introducing entirely new events. Instead, he revisited earlier moments and gave them new meaning. Simple interactions were described in ways that suggested deeper conflict. Private decisions were presented as signs of control or disagreement. This method created a version of events that felt more dramatic and more emotionally charged than earlier accounts. Inside this narrative, the relationship between Meghan and Prince Harry was often placed under a microscope. Their decisions were framed as part of a larger pattern of separation from traditional royal expectations. Moments that once seemed private or personal were reinterpreted as indicators of growing distance between them and the institution they were part of. At the same time, the royal household itself was portrayed as an environment with strict boundaries. According to Bauer's framing, any disruption to those boundaries created friction. Meghan's independent background and modern outlook were often highlighted as factors that clashed with established traditions. This created a story where two different worlds were constantly in tension. As these ideas spread, earlier events were re-examined. Conversations that had already taken place years before were revisited with new assumptions attached to them. What had once been ordinary interactions were now seen through a more critical perspective. This process made the narrative feel heavier, as if every past moment carried hidden meaning. The effect of the biography was not limited to its direct content. It also influenced how future events were interpreted. Once the framing was established, new developments were often viewed through the same lens. This meant that even unrelated actions were sometimes connected back to earlier interpretations of conflict and control. Within this growing narrative, Meghan's position became more complicated. Supporters of the earlier optimistic view saw the biography as a one-sided interpretation, while others used it as confirmation of doubts they already had. This divide did not create new events, but it strengthened existing disagreements about how those events should be understood. Prince Harry's role was also shaped within this framing. His choices were often described as being influenced by loyalty, emotion, and personal conviction. The biography suggested that his path had shifted significantly from the expectations placed on him earlier in life, and this shift became part of the wider interpretation of royal separation. As time passed, Revenge became more than just a book. It turned into a reference point in ongoing discussions. Even brief mentions of Meghan or Harry were sometimes linked back to its themes. The narrative it built continued to echo in conversations, reinforcing a specific version of events that many either accepted or strongly rejected. And as the discussion around the book settled into place, attention slowly began shifting toward another sensitive subject that would once again put Meghan under intense scrutiny. Pregnancy under the microscope. During Meghan Markle's pregnancy, attention around her life reached a much sharper level. Every moment connected to her condition became something people watched closely. Simple appearances were no longer seen as ordinary. Instead, they were studied in detail, as if each movement carried a hidden meaning. When she stepped out in public, even briefly, the focus was intense. The way she walked, the way she held herself, and the timing of each appearance were all carefully observed. Nothing was left unnoticed. What would normally be a private and personal journey turned into a subject of constant discussion and interpretation. As time went on, comparisons began to grow stronger. Catherine, Princess of Wales, had experienced pregnancies that were widely shared with the public in a very structured and visible way. This created a natural reference point for many observers. Meghan's experience was viewed differently, not because it followed a different path, but because the level of visibility did not match what some expected. This difference became the center of many conversations. Some people believed Meghan was choosing privacy in a way that suited her personal comfort and security. Others saw the reduced visibility as unusual and began forming different theories around it. These interpretations spread quickly across different spaces of discussion, turning a personal moment into a widely debated topic. Every new image or appearance added another layer to the discussion. Small details were repeatedly analyzed. The timing between appearances, the style of clothing, and the way photographs were captured all became points of focus. Even natural changes during pregnancy were interpreted in different ways depending on who was viewing them. At the same time, Tom Bower's earlier commentary on media treatment became part of the wider conversation. His perspective on how Meghan was often portrayed was referenced by those who believed she was being unfairly judged. They saw the intense scrutiny as part of a pattern where her actions were constantly questioned. This interpretation suggested that the attention she received was not balanced. On the other side, critics formed a very different view. They believed Meghan's approach to visibility was intentional and carefully controlled. In their interpretation, the limited public exposure was not just about privacy, but also about shaping how her pregnancy was seen. This created a strong divide in how the same events were understood. As these opposing views grew, the pregnancy became more than a personal experience. It turned into a symbol of broader disagreement. Each side used the same moments to support very different conclusions. This made it difficult for any single interpretation to dominate. Even simple photographs were no longer seen as straightforward. The angle, lighting, and timing of each image were examined as if they held hidden meaning. Some believed the images were carefully selected to present a specific version of events. Others believed they were simply normal family moments, being shared in a controlled way for privacy reasons. The comparison with Catherine continued to shape the discussion. Her public journey during pregnancy was often described as steady and open, which made the contrast more noticeable. This contrast was not based on direct actions alone, moments that once seemed private or personal, but on how differently each experience was presented and received. As the pregnancy progressed, the conversation did not settle. Instead, it continued to expand. The birth, the privacy, and the questions that followed. After the birth announcement, a new phase of attention began around Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. The moment should have been calm and joyful, but instead, it became the start of a different kind of discussion. The focus slowly shifted away from celebration and moved toward how much was being shared and how much was being kept private. Meghan and Harry made careful decisions about what details to reveal. Some parts of the experience were shared, while others were kept away from public view. This approach created curiosity. For some people, privacy made sense. For others, it raised questions that kept growing over time. As days passed, different interpretations began to form. Online spaces started to fill with discussions about what was known and what was not. Small gaps in information were noticed and repeatedly examined. These gaps became the center of long conversations where people tried to connect details that were not fully visible. Although there was no verified evidence behind many of the theories that later appeared, repetition gave them weight in certain circles. Ideas about secrecy, timing, and presentation were discussed again and again until they became part of a wider conversation. Over time, these discussions started to move away from facts and into interpretation. Tom Bower's earlier framing of Meghan's relationship with media and public communication was often brought into these conversations. His interpretation of her approach was used by some critics as a way to explain why certain details were not shared openly. In their view, privacy was not only personal, but also strategic. This belief shaped how they interpreted each decision that followed. On the other side, supporters saw the situation very differently. They believed the level of attention placed on such private matters was too intense. In their view, choosing privacy during such a sensitive time was natural and reasonable. They argued that not every detail of family life needed to be made public, especially during important personal moments. This difference in interpretation created a strong divide. The same actions were seen in completely opposite ways depending on perspective. What one group saw as careful control, another group saw as normal protection of privacy. As the child's early life began, attention did not fade. Instead, it shifted into how the child was introduced to the world. The timing of appearances, the limited exposure, and the controlled nature of shared images all became part of the discussion. Each decision was observed closely and interpreted differently by different groups. The idea of image control became central to the conversation. Some believed that every appearance was carefully planned to shape perception. Others believed it was simply a matter of protecting a young child from unnecessary exposure. Both interpretations continued to exist side by side without resolution. The use of private life boundaries also became a major point of focus. In modern royal expectations, public access and private life often overlap, but not always in the same way for every member. Meghan and Harry's approach leaned more toward privacy, which added another layer to the ongoing discussion. Tom Bower's framing of Meghan's communication style continued to be referenced in this period. His interpretation suggested that messaging and visibility were carefully managed, and this idea was often repeated by those who already questioned earlier decisions. It became part of a wider narrative that linked past behavior with current choices. Meanwhile, supporters pointed out that many public figures choose to limit exposure during early family life. They saw the attention as excessive and argued that assumptions were being made without full understanding of personal circumstances. This created a continuous contrast between interpretation and intent. As time moved forward, the focus did not settle. Instead, it evolved. Each new detail added to the existing conversation. Even small updates were analyzed in relation to earlier events, creating a chain of interpretation that kept expanding. However, a video of Meghan's child posted online was about to turn everyone against Meghan. The child, the camera, and the battle of interpretations. As time moved forward, the child began to appear only in carefully chosen moments. These appearances were rare, and each one was planned with clear attention to setting and timing. Nothing was shown casually. Every image or sighting came with a sense of control, as if the environment had been prepared in advance to ensure privacy and safety. These controlled moments quickly became the center of growing interpretation. Some people looked at them and saw a natural effort to protect a young child from too much exposure. Others looked at the same moments and saw something different. They believed the limited visibility raised questions, and they began building their own explanations around it. The child's presence in public was not frequent, and this absence created space for discussion. In that space, people filled in their own ideas. Some believed that privacy was being carefully maintained for healthy development. Others believed that the level of control suggested something more deliberate in shaping how the family was seen. Even simple appearances were studied closely. The background, the timing, and the setting of each moment became points of attention. A photograph was no longer just a photograph. It became something that was analyzed, compared, and interpreted in different ways depending on the viewer. At the same time, everyday details about family life also became part of the conversation. The mention of nannies, security arrangements, and private living spaces was no longer seen as routine. Instead, these details were pulled into wider narratives. What is normal for many families, especially those in high-profile positions, became a subject of debate when connected to Meghan and Harry. Some people viewed these arrangements as practical and necessary. They believed that additional help and security were expected in their situation. Others, however, interpreted the same details differently. They saw them as signs of distance or detachment from traditional expectations. This difference in interpretation created a growing divide in how the family was understood. Tom Bower's earlier commentary on Meghan's relationship with media attention returned strongly during this phase. His framing of her approach to public communication was often referenced again. In some discussions, his interpretation was used to support the idea that visibility was carefully managed. This idea suggested that nothing was left to chance, and that each appearance carried a purpose beyond what was immediately visible. However, not everyone accepted this view. Many believed that applying such interpretations to private family moments went too far. They argued that raising a child naturally involves boundaries, and that those boundaries should not automatically be seen as strategic decisions. This disagreement added another layer to the ongoing divide. As more time passed, the same pattern continued. A rare appearance would happen, followed by detailed interpretation. Then silence would follow, and during that silence, new theories and explanations would form. The cycle repeated itself again and again, building tension without resolution. The child, instead of simply growing in private, became a point around which different stories formed. Each side held on to its own understanding. One side saw protection and care. Moments that once seemed private or personal were reinterpreted as indicators of growing distance between them and the institution they were part of. The other saw control and intention. Neither side fully accepted the other's view, and this made the discussion more intense over time. Even neutral moments were not free from interpretation. A simple outing, a shared image, or a brief appearance could become a topic of extended discussion. The meaning attached to each moment often depended more on perspective than on the moment itself. Tom Bower's influence in the broader conversation remained present in the background. His framing of media strategy and personal communication continued to shape how some people interpreted actions that might otherwise have been seen as ordinary. His ideas became part of a wider structure of analysis that some used to support their views. Meanwhile, others pushed back strongly against this approach. They believed that over-analysis of family life removed the natural simplicity of parenting. In their view, not every decision needed to be explained through a lens of strategy or intention. This ongoing conflict created what many described as interpretation wars. Each side built its understanding based on the same set of visible facts, yet arrived at completely different conclusions. The child remained at the center of this divide, not by choice, but by the attention placed around each moment connected to their life. The viral moment and the echo that never fades. A single resurfaced video clip marked the beginning of a new wave of attention around Meghan Markle. The clip itself was short, but the reaction around it was not. It appeared in different forms, sometimes edited, sometimes taken out of its original context, and each version carried a slightly different tone. From that moment, the discussion around Meghan shifted once again. At first, it seemed like a small moment that would pass quickly, but instead, it grew. People began replaying it, slowing it down, and focusing on small details within it. The way she moved, the expressions on her face, and the timing of her actions all became points of discussion. What had once been a simple recording turned into a subject of layered interpretation. As the clip spread through different spaces, it started to change shape. Some versions removed context, others highlighted only certain seconds. Each version created a slightly different story. With each retelling, the meaning of the moment became less fixed and more open to interpretation. Soon, the conversation around the clip expanded beyond the original moment. It was no longer just about what was seen. It became about what people believed it represented. Some interpreted it as a normal family interaction that had been misunderstood. Others believed it revealed something deeper about behavior and intent. This division created a growing echo. Each discussion led to another, and each opinion was repeated, reshaped, and shared again. Over time, the same ideas began to circulate in a cycle. The more they were repeated, the more weight they seemed to carry, even when no new information was added. Tabloids quickly picked up fragments of the conversation. Instead of focusing on the full context, they often highlighted selected parts. These fragments were then used to build simplified narratives that were easy to repeat and discuss. This process made the original moment feel larger than it actually was. At the same time, commentators and online voices began offering their own interpretations. Some focused on body language, others focused on timing or setting. Each interpretation added another layer to the growing conversation. The original clip became less important than the many meanings attached to it. Within this environment, Tom Bower's earlier framing of Meghan's media presence was often referenced again. His interpretation of her relationship with public attention was used by some critics as a way to support their reading of the clip. Even when he was not directly involved in discussing the moment, his broader narrative was brought into the conversation as a reference point. In this way, his influence acted like a background lens. It shaped how certain people interpreted new material, even when the content was unrelated to his specific claims. His earlier framing of control, strategy, and media awareness became part of how the clip was understood by those who already agreed with that perspective. However, others strongly rejected this approach. They believed the clip was being overanalyzed and taken out of proportion. In their view, a short and edited moment could not represent a full picture of a person's behavior or intentions. They argued that repeated interpretation was creating meaning that was not originally there. As these two perspectives continued to grow, the echo effect became stronger. Each side repeated its own understanding, and over time, both interpretations became more fixed within their respective circles. The original clip no longer stood alone. It became part of a much larger pattern of discussion. What made this stage different was the speed at which everything moved. A single moment could quickly transform into multiple narratives within a short time. Once these narratives formed, they continued to circulate, often without returning to the original source for context. The environment around Meghan at this point was shaped less by new actions and more by repeated interpretation of past and present moments. Each new piece of content was absorbed into an existing structure of understanding, which influenced how it was received. Even silence between events did not reduce the intensity. Instead, it created space for reflection, analysis, and further discussion. The absence of new clarity often led to more interpretation, not less. And as this echo continued to spread, attention slowly began shifting again, this time toward broader questions of pressure, scrutiny, and outside influence that would push the story into an even more intense phase. The fracture of truth and the end of one clear story. As time moves forward, the story around Meghan Markle reaches a point where everything begins to split into different versions. There is no longer one clear way to understand what is happening. Instead, there are many interpretations, all existing at the same time, each shaped by different beliefs and assumptions. In this stage, Meghan is described in completely opposite ways depending on who is speaking. Some see her as misunderstood, someone who entered a difficult system and struggled with its pressure. Others see her as highly strategic, someone who carefully managed how she appeared and how she was understood. At the same time, there are those who believe she was unfairly targeted from the beginning, placed under constant scrutiny that shaped how every action was viewed. These different views do not replace each other. They exist together, side by side, even when they contradict. This creates a situation where the same person can be described in many ways, all at once, without agreement on which version is closest to the truth. As this continues, older events begin to return to the conversation again and again. Moments connected to royal departure, family tension, and institutional conflict are revisited repeatedly. Each time they are brought up, they are seen through a slightly different lens. This makes the understanding of those events less stable, as new interpretations are added over time. Moments that once seemed private or personal were reinterpreted as indicators of growing distance between them and the institution they were part of. In this environment, Tom Bower's influence remains present in the background. His narrative does not change, but its role in shaping interpretation continues. For those who agree with his framing, his interpretation acts as a guide for understanding past events. It gives structure to how they connect different moments together. Even years after his most discussed work, his perspective continues to be used as a reference point in ongoing debates. However, not everyone accepts this framing. Many people see his interpretation as only one version among many. They believe that focusing too much on one narrative limits the understanding of a much more complex situation. In their view, relying heavily on one perspective creates an incomplete picture of events that involve many different factors. As these disagreements grow, the idea of a single truth begins to weaken. Instead of one clear explanation, there are multiple competing truths. Each one feels complete to those who believe it, but none are fully accepted by everyone. This creates a fractured landscape where agreement becomes increasingly rare. Over time, the focus shifts away from trying to find one final answer. Instead, attention moves toward interpretation itself. The way events are understood becomes more important than the events themselves. Meaning is shaped by perspective, and perspective is shaped by belief. In this final stage, Meghan's story is no longer just about specific moments or individual decisions. It becomes a reflection of how narratives are built, repeated, and changed over time. Each new discussion adds another layer, but none of them fully replace what came before. Even silence between major events does not bring clarity. Instead, it leaves space for reflection, where old interpretations return and are reshaped again. This ongoing cycle means the story never fully settles. It continues to shift depending on who is telling it and how it is being viewed. The result is not closure, but fragmentation. Different versions of the same story exist at the same time, each supported by its own reasoning. Some focus on intention, others on perception, and others on interpretation of behavior. None of them fully merge into one agreed version. Tom Bower's presence in this final stage is less about new claims and more about lasting influence. His narrative remains part of the structure through which some people continue to interpret events. It acts like a background layer that shapes how certain ideas are connected, even when no new material is added. At the same time, opposing interpretations continue to challenge that structure. They question whether any single framing can fully explain a situation that involves so many personal, institutional, and public elements. This tension keeps the debate open, without resolution. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.